Hello, good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Once again, we begin the show by taking a trip to Boku, where the defense minister tells us there is pure criminal activity. Absolutely nothing to do with decades-long chieftaincy crisis. So how does the state intend to end the bloodbath and secure lasting peace? The Attorney General versus the Auditor General. The Attorney General writes to the Auditor General, advising him not to publish audit reports until and unless Parliament has seen it and debated it. He advises or instructs the Auditor General to withdraw the COVID-19 audit reports until those processes are concluded, because the Constitution is breached by the Auditor General making the publications about the time that Parliament is seized with his reports. Some are against the Attorney General, including CSOs. They say he's better off keeping his advice to himself, and that he's invading and interfering with the independence of the Auditor General. The president did something that many commentators are hesitant to call a reshuffle, one that was expected long ago. So, as there are mounting calls even at the back of this so-called reshuffle for the president to cut the size of his government, will he listen? The debt exchange, we're told that 70% is what has been achieved so far. The government needs 80% to be able to return to the IMF and get a path going forward. Will it get the 10% left in the midst of growing protests? Pensioners, now joined by a former Chief Justice, whom many have risen to show love for what she has done. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. You're welcome back. And here is Samson's take. Overwhelming mistrust for police. Justified? You may have seen the video of the West Hills Mall incident that has dominated the news. Yes, a crowd is gathering around someone on the floor in handcuffs. He turns briefly and stops. He seems lifeless. The cuffs are quickly removed. Management of the mall said their security ensured he was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival that afternoon of the 30th of January 2023. The sister of 32-year-old Shadrach Alo and some quote-unquote eyewitnesses blame police for using a taser on him, struggling with him, or beating him to death. Shadrach, according to managers of the mall, refused to allow a search of his bag suspected to contain narcotics. He resisted arrest, struggled with security, and is captured on CCTV picking something from his bag and swallowing it. The managers report The police urged calm and assured of thorough investigations. February 7 comes. That's 8 days later. They issued a statement detailing what seemed a painstaking process, compliant with high professional standards in conducting the autopsy. A number of MPs, one of them lawyer for the family, do not deny agreeing to or observing what appears a very transparent process. I put up a post commending the collaborative and consensual and transparent medical examination process and admonished that it was best practice for people to be hesitant to take sides and speak in absolute terms without any caveats when they do not have both sides of the issue. In the shortest time, most commentators on my Facebook wall doubted the police account. I even got calls from professionals who have dealt with the police, expressing belief that the cannabis said to have been found in Shadrach's throat, that's the cause of his death, must have been planted by the police. His sister and his lawyer are demanding an independent examination that takes into account the other circumstances, including the effect of the alleged use of a taser on him. The level of general mistrust for the police, even in this report, that sounds reasonably believable, must be of great concern. People have true stories about unscrupulous police officers planting drugs on them to extort money. In October 2019, the police service had cause to issue a warning to officers against the conduct. Recently, a supposed cabbie, that's a taxi driver, was exposed for lying about such an incident to damage the image of the police. But these stories are easily believable, generally because of unconstitutional, unlawful, and corrupt police conduct that go unpunished. In 2018, the Justice Kumsin Committee indicted some 21 police officers for framing 7 people they killed in Manson Kwanta, that's Asawasi in the Ashanti region, as armed robbers. They lied. The families were given 250,000 cedis each, with a firm promise by authorities, including the president, that the officers will be prosecuted. This has not happened, despite MP for the area, Muntaka Mubarak, raising the issue in Parliament and seeking justice. An MP sat on live TV, his own TV station, publicly threatened Erastus Asaredonko and asked that he be beaten. Erastus's crime was that he did bold journalism in capturing on tape and exposing the shooting of youth in Ejura who were protesting what seemed obvious politically motivated murder of Fix the Country activists in the community, Macho Kaka. A complaint was lodged with police in July 2021. They issued a statement promptly promising the world that they had commenced investigations into the threat on Erastus. But not a word has been heard since. I followed Erastus to the police station then. I dare say absolutely nothing has been done. There are several such incidents of police misconduct. I'm not talking about the so-called ordinary incidents, but so-called high-profile ones. And very little or nothing is heard about disciplinary or legal action. And you wonder what impression the police think they leave in the public's eye. This is not fair to the many police officers who are honest and conduct their affairs to the rule and professionally. Everything must be done to change this perception, because a society that cannot trust the police creates fertile ground for crime and criminal conduct to thrive. Our individual and collective security is compromised if deliberate action is not taken quickly to change this narrative. The police ought, truly so, to be our friends. But on this West Hills Mall incident, it should be useful to show the video of the guy allegedly swallowing the 8 zipped bags of cannabis to put the matter of the cause of death to rest. It may also be useful to let the accused police and private security officers face prosecution to see if the eggshell skull rule, or what we call you take your victim as you find them principle of law, will apply. It works like this. Kofi slaps Ama, who suffers sickle cell disease and is usually weak. Ama goes into coma and later dies. Kofi cannot say, when charged with the offense of murder, that Ama wouldn't have died were she not ill, and that the sickle cell disease is to blame for her death. When asked what caused her death, Kofi's slap will be the cause and not sickle cell disease. Kofi would have to take his victim, Ama, as he found her. Dear IGP Akufo-Dampare, you have shown much promise, but please, do not tell us about initiating service inquiry when officers are accused of criminal conduct. What killed Shadrach? Is it the suffocation by swallowing of the cannabis, asphyxiation they call it, is it? Or is it positional asphyxiation caused by taser, or it is both? That is my take. We'll be right back to be joined by my guests for this morning. And as always, this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical entrepreneur leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on the MTN to join. And St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. We'll be right back.
Mr. Speaker, there have been political will from the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo government. So let not be said that there's not been political will. Let's be very careful who we choose to talk for in Boku. I want to plead with you, Pope. That's why, Honorable Ayaga, I told you, come to the office and let me sit with you with the military command and let's discuss it. I told you before, 3 days ago, on Monday. Maybe if you had come and we start, maybe this statement would not have been made. Until the soldiers were complaining that you, the defense minister and the interior minister, had never visited them. And I brought the complaint to you. Now, you sit here and tell me that the soldiers and the police were complaining that you were never visiting them. You brought them to come, they are being exposed to death, and you, their commander, never stepped foot there to see them. Please, let's not talk personal here. I have sat down quietly and listened, not because I don't have responses. So, Speaker, why they kill the people? I'm pleading with you, go there. Go and see with your naked eyes. And I'm not choosing to speak for only Kusasis. That last statement you made, that we should be careful who we speak for. Please, I understand everything that you are saying there. I'm not speaking only for Kusasis. I'm speaking because people that ought not to have been killed were killed.
Currently, what we are doing at Westside is to calm things down and for us to have peace. Yesterday, we hear during the night, they were also fighting also. And some people have passed on. Our understanding is that officially about 2, but people are telling us 4, so we are checking to make sure to know the numbers. But this is what is happening. Boku is very charged as we speak now, and we have informed our security services to see what they can do to bring calm to the place.
I'm sure you have some initial report as to what could have led to this fresh fighting last night that you're talking about.
Yes, after we had left, one person was killed, and that was on that very Monday. And then the following day, 2 people were also killed. I am sure it's because of this that is led to the killings, and now Bokwe is fully charged.
And per the reports that you're getting, we are mentioning 5. How many persons exactly from these fresh killings that we are talking about? How many persons exactly have lost their lives, you'd say?
Well, for now, what I know officially is 2. But as I said, I am hearing 4. But officially, we deal with official numbers. If I say official numbers, what the police know, these are the information that I'm giving you.
Right, so as you may be aware, Boku once again is in the center of the news, and for all the wrong reasons. Last week we chronicled and went through the 10 people who have been killed, and the contrary story from the MP for the area, Mahama Yarga, who has filed a petition before Shraj asking for investigations and for compensation for the families of the 10. You heard earlier the Ghana Armed Forces position that these were criminal activities that were going on, and they had to take position, go in there and do what they call neutralize these individuals, some of whom they said, provoked or attempted to, as it were, fight them. So how do we end the bloodbath? And if you speak to some people there, they will tell you that it is only that this has gotten this attention, but the matter of people being killed has become almost a normal situation that people wake up to. People are being killed almost all the time. That must end. So, joining us to help us in this discussion, Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired. He's author, conflict and security analyst, UNDP consultant on disarmament, South Sudan, adjunct member center on democratic transitions, Ghana, and former member, Save the Children International Military Advisory Group. Also joining us is Dr. Victor Doke, is that correct? Forgive me if I don't pronounce your last name correctly. He's lecturer, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you too, Samson.
Great.
Good morning to you.
Thank you very much. I've got in the studio Joseph Dimdiok Penka, who is lawyer, former Attorney General and Minister, former Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and former MP for Timpani. MPs for those areas normally are very hesitant to comment on the matters there. You too? Okay. I've been reading quite a lot of history, dating back to many years and even before 1957, from Abu Ghraib's ascension that began the problems between Abu Ghraib and Jeremiah and all of them. Anyway, also here in the studio is Sammy Jemfi. He is lawyer and National Communications Officer, the National Democratic Congress. Long time.
Very long time.
Right. Yeah, he's been having a very long time. Long over?
Long.
Oh, he shouldn't. It's continuous. All right.
I haven't seen you since.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Right. And joining us via Zoom is Clara Berry Kasati. She is lawyer, vice chairperson, CDD Ghana, board and law lecturer, University of Ghana School of Law. Senyor Hosi is convener, Individual Bondholders Forum. Thank you all very much. So let's begin with the peace-building people on how we can what we can do to get peace in Boko, and I mean permanent peace. That's what we are seeking. The Catholic Bishops' Conference, you know, they are always issuing these statements. They go to the ground, see what is happening, and when very pertinent issues are happening in the country, they make a point. So they issued a statement, and they said that the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference appeals to government and the people of Boko to help bring the protracted conflict in Boko to an end and give peace a chance. I read just 2 paragraphs of what they had to. They said, they, the members of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, are saddened by recent development in Boko, leading to the death of 15 people and other people sustaining varied degrees of injuries. They say, we are deeply concerned about the deteriorating security situation in the area. They have been keenly following it keenly. In 2022, they issued a statement on it, and they were concerned. And they said, quote, it appears the conflict and insecurity in Boko are gradually getting off the radar of government. The town has become a pale shadow of itself as education, health, and social services delivery is adversely affected by the exodus of teachers, nurses, and business people from the town. Government needs to pay attention to the plight of the remnant residents of the town by ensuring that lasting solution is found to the conflict in the area, and should act swiftly to prevent Boko and its environs from becoming a possible launching pad for terrorist groups operating in neighboring countries. Well, as you know, some people have taken refuge in that area. So let me begin with Dr. Victor. Doc, thank you very much. I've followed in the course of the week how you are helping in the discussion to, you know, sort of help bring peace to the area. The Catholic Bishops' Conference say, while they are commending the security personnel on the ground for working towards security and peace in Boko, please, this is where I'm bringing my question to you. We call on them to be more professional and circumspect in the discharge of their duties and be measured in the use of their firearms so as not to kill innocent people. Why do you think we have what is happening there now going on with the military having to directly encounter, shoot, and kill people?
Good morning to you, Samson, and good morning to the other panelists and to your listeners. Thank you for having me on your show. Going straight to your question, with what the Catholic bishops have stated, well, obviously they are also for peace. But how can we ensure that before we obtain peace, the underlying factors that have been existed or that exist from the two sides as they have raised their concerns based on their needs, wants, and what they are interested in have been addressed? These issues have not been addressed. So there's already a lingering tension, and any proximate factor or any trigger based on ethnic lines, it could be an argument between two groups, would just generate into ethnic factions, and then that would lead to armed clashes. Now, how do we ensure professionalism and be circumspect going forward with regards to our military?
You say lingering factors regarding the chieftaincy, decades-long chieftaincy situation. The defense minister says what is going on is pure crime. Let's not mix it with chieftaincy.
Well, Samson, from my study conducted and the information that I have with regards to data from the two parties, they have raised issues. For example, let's take the opposite ceremony that has to be performed, and then the chief would declare the conflict over. This has not been performed. One party, that's the Mankusi, stated it's not their tradition. They don't see it as part of their tradition. They connote it to infidelity. So why then should they celebrate that particular rite? So how can we come up with an option viable to them to engage the Kusasis, and then agree, finalize the process, and declare the conflict over. Now, we cannot shy away that the root cause of this conflict is chieftaincy. Now, the discussion has been bordering around the proximate causes of armed conflicts. Well, we know that the chieftaincy itself is not a subject for discussion because one party has stated that it is already agreed, the court has settled, so there's no discussion. If you have any grievances concerning that, then you have to start litigation. Fair enough. So going forward, how do we ensure that those issues that I've talked about, i.e. the opposite ceremony, and then others such as festival celebrations, where one party feels they are going through a lot of processes to obtain clearance to celebrate their festivals. And by that, they see it as sort of like kowtowing to the authority, which they don't want to. And during the festivals, how do we ensure that the youth from one side do not start provocative gestures? Going forward, how do we ensure that the weapons, communal weapons in the system, the individual weapons are obtained from these youths? These are factors that we need to look at. The embargo on the farming activities with regards to the Mampusis being farmers, how do we ensure that they come back and obtain their livelihood? These factors are already linked. Until we deal with it, we have to be careful not to look at things from the top-bottom approach, but bottom up, otherwise we'll miss the mark. And to be circumspect with regards to the military, well, I'll propose a solution. Let's look at how our military, if in the event of encountering these young armed groups, how can they get these armed guys, obtain intelligence from them? Because when you're talking about intelligence, it's not just one side based on military. You can use these guys, obtain intelligence. Who are they? Let's find out. Where are they from? Are they in the community? Did they come out? What is their intention? What do they hope to achieve? These are solutions that I'll propose going forward.
Okay.
The unfortunate has already happened.
Right. And, kind of Festus Abuaji, this problem, reminiscent of the Dagbon situation, you've had judicial interventions that failed. You've had legislative interventions. You've had administrative from the government trying to impose certain things by decrees that have failed. This military option that appears to be the focus of the minister now, because he says that he's sending 500 more military personnel next week. We understand that, they had 50 and the soldiers was moved to 400, and says now he's sending another 500 task force to Boku next week. Is this helpful?
Well, first of all, as per procedure, let me thank you very much for having me and say hello to all the colleagues, both in the studio and online. My understanding of the approach of government is that it seems as if the military deployment itself is an end in itself. This conflict, as indeed many inter-ethnic conflicts and other conflicts, are never solved through the use of force. And anybody who understands the cultural and historical dynamics of the Kusasi-Mampusi conflict within the wider Mole-Dagboni conflict between the autochthones and the Nanum, Mampusi, and Dagbon, let me call them overlords, can never be solved by deploying the military. The military essentially is to try and contribute to de-escalation of the violence that rose up within a very short space of time, in order that it creates that kind of space, not geographical space, but a space where mediation and dialogue can begin to take place constructively. In doing so, it doesn't help at all that certain utterances by politically exposed persons, including the defense minister, start labeling any or all the parties as criminals. It doesn't help. In fact, the books say that labeling or putting labels on parties in a conflict is counterproductive. It helps to inflame passions. So the first step in dealing with the situation in Boku, which is to de-escalate the tension, is for all sides and all the entities involved, those in power, those in parliament, which indeed has become a proxy to the battle space, must be measured in their statements. But I'm more interested in the deployment of the military, which I understand to be a conflict management mechanism, not a conflict resolution mechanism. We all understand that the government has been reactive, and probably there was a failure in intelligence, because if intelligence was working, the state should have known sometime late last year, from June, July, August, September, October, November, thereabout, that there were signs of conflict erupting in Boku. We have been reactive, and therefore that intelligence aspect, which has been mentioned by my colleague, needs to be, deepened. The military just imposed a curfew, which is to restrict movements, including motorbikes, persons, and so on. And that has had socio-economic consequences. In this economic climate, how do we expect the Kusasis and the Mamprusis, the Bisas, the Moshis, the Mobes, and so on in that enclave, how do we expect them to survive? So there is need, as indeed the military has sought to do, to declare Boku, the whole Boku East-West, as a weapons-free zone. Now, how they go about it is where we have a challenge, or I have a challenge with. First of all, what are the political goals for the deployment of the military? As far as I'm concerned, I don't know what the political objectives are for deploying the military, except, of course, the minister said in Parliament that they must go and maintain peace.
That's right.
So, subject to maintaining peace, what are the tasks that the military have been authorized to undertake? What are their concept of operations? Especially, what are the rules of engagement? Because security forces don't deploy because they have been mandated to go and maintain peace, and they are going to use force. And in one incident, 10 people get killed, and that is labeled as neutralization. It raises a lot of legal, political, humanitarian, or human rights issues. And I think we need to, begin to work towards that. My humble suggestion at this stage, I've got many other points, is that if this same security force approach has been adopted, let's say, in a place like South Sudan by the UN would have established joint monitoring committees or teams. The press releases that have come have said that when intelligence was obtained or information was obtained, the military deployed or security forces deployed a patrol. Why can't it be a joint patrol in which the parties, both the Kusasis and the Mamprusis, are part of? It's a confidence-building measure.
Right.
It also promotes transparency, and if you like, a bit of impartiality and so on and so forth. Lastly,
Okay.
Yes, please. You asked for
yes, your friend Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso,
yes.
Dean of the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, he has, advised government to invest heavily in gathering intelligence on the terrorist activities in Boku. Terrorist activities in the area. He speaks of terrorist organizations that must be stopped immediately. What do you see? Is it not clear, gauging from the information we are picking, including from the Minister, Defense, that there was an attempt to blow up a bridge? And knowing about the influx of, these people seeking, as it were, shelter, there. Is he not right in asking us to label what is going on exactly as what it is? There's terrorist activity going on. There is terrorist organization operation going on.
The dilemma for all of us, particularly for the government and the minister, is that the fact that there's a cockroach in your room or house doesn't mean you bring down the whole house to look for that one cockroach. That is what I call the Malu doctrine. That's the late General Victor Malu. Granted that we have terrorism echoing off our northern borders, that is the more reason why we must be very, very balanced in the use of force. Because any one person that you kill can be a catalyst for the group that that person belongs to seek alliances from across the border. And therefore, if you like, complicate, the situation that we have on hand. So let's deal with the threat of terrorism. And as you said, Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso says that let's deepen our intelligence capacities or capabilities. But let's isolate the counter-terrorism approaches from the Boko conflict and how we are seeking to resolve it. And at this stage, it looks like the activities of the security forces are actually inflaming passions and making it possible for some of the parties probably to seek alliances from other groups across the border, or for those groups to offer their services, and even for those who are behind the mobilizations, some of whom may be in Accra, who provide the funding, to provide the funds for the purchase of arms. And I'm reliably informed that there are machine guns being used in that conflict. That is a very serious sense of escalation.
Right.
Why did we allow this conflict late last year to get to where it is? That in one day or 1 week, we lose 10 lives, if not more. And we begin to see machine guns beyond the normal Kalashnikovs or AK-47s. That sense of escalation is something that I think we need to be very concerned about.
Right. I will have to get you and Dr. Victor, leave us there and get just brief comments from our guests, and then we'll move on to our other issues. But I'll come to you shortly. Now, Doc, this is a situation where clearly, as you look at it, you say you can't take and say criminal activity in isolation. There are triggers. I'm looking at this. People whose history shows that for a century and a half, 150 years, you had the Mamprusis, in control. And then from that point on, where there is a little break, is it Ali, someone who was the chief then, now dies, and then there's a problem, 1957. And then you have two, rival groups. And here we're being told that the most populated, tribe in the place is the Kusasi. If you put all the other tribes together, don't come up to their population. And I'm talking about if you put both the Mamprusi, Moshi, Busanga, they say Frafra, and a few houses who live there permanently. It's said that if you put all those tribes together, they don't come anywhere near the Kusasi figure. And the Kusasi insists that we are here, we own land, we must rule. And the Mamprusi also insists that, well, some of the Genesis you speak to, we don't know you to have been people who own land and must also, rule, and the rest of them. How do you resolve that issue, which is the real issue?
Well, Samson, thank you very much. That was very insightful from you, the historical antecedents. Now, let's not forget, now, when in your narration, the important aspect, which later on we know about, is the settlement by the appeals court in 1960s or so, which then ruled in favor of the Kusasis. Now, my study revealed that the Mampusis discontinued the challenge. If we are to say we want to move forward concerning this historical background, then, well, litigation is a way forward. But then, does it still stand as of now? Let's not forget, now the Kusasis are in charge now with regards to the Okuskin. How would they also react? Why don't you look at the issue of resolving the underlying factors and then go forward and settle the issue? If we want to go back to that historical antecedent, then Samson, we are triggering more issues we cannot handle.
Interesting. Thank you, Doc. And Colonel Professor Sabuaji, so as we understand, the government approach by way of the military response, some may say you are militarizing the situation, but they are looking at, law and order in a situation where there is some chaos. Is it your suggestion that the state must tone down on that? Because you need to keep law and order before you can pursue peace. Yes, please, unmute your microphone.
Sorry, please. To the contrary, I think my understanding is that it is the government that is seeming or appearing to, focus too much on the approach of security forces. And I've tried to argue that security forces are not going to be able to solve the root causes. Maybe they can put a damper on the triggers, as my colleague has suggested. And we cannot also permanently resolve the issues if we don't address the root causes. So we're in a very dicey situation. What we need at this moment is that we need a climate where all the parties can begin to talk. And my understanding will be that we should not impose any solutions on the people. The role that everybody else must play, the government, parliament, for instance, religious bodies like the Catholic Bishops' Conference, and so on, is to facilitate dialogue between these groups. And so far,
as we speak, because you mentioned the Catholic Bishop Conference and other religious bodies, as we speak, the religious organizations have had occasion to contemplate even removing their personnel who are in charge of hospital, health facility that is, very useful to the people. even religious organization is thinking about removing, the hospital, or, well, if you remove the personnel, there's no hospital.
That's right.
There are banks and other installations that have moved to Bolga. I have many friends from Boku from our days in, Navasco, who would prefer to be in Bolga than be in Boku.
That's right. So we cannot do without the security forces, in the first instance, creating those conditions where dialogue can take place.
All right.
That is a necessity. But since the military or security forces were deployed, we don't seem, as the Catholic Bishop Conference put out, we don't seem to be aware of any constructive engagement by the government with the parties, except, let's say, the Regional Security Council or Regional Coordination Council and so on. But I've explained that these structures are all politically exposed structures because everybody in there is appointed by the government. And you and I know, and it is, researched, that the two main parties, Kusasis, are pro-NDC, and Mamprusis are pro-NPP. So the perception to the Kusasis will be that everything that is happening there is because of the perception that they have government of the day support. You see? So let's begin to see concrete measures. First of all, that appeal course process that the defense minister mentioned needs to be expedited, because creating a legal basis for traditional authority in that enclave, for instance, is very helpful. If the Supreme Court says that the rightful Bokunaba should be a Kusasi, or the rightful Bokunaba should be a Mamprusi, that is part of the solution. We then need to dialogue the Supreme Court decision. And it can be dialogued only by the two parties, including education and so on and so on. That is not happening.
Okay.
You see,
all right.
It's not happening as if the processes must be sequential, that you deploy security forces for 6 months, and then at the end of that, you resort to another segment of the process. No, they could work in tandem.
Okay.
And that, I think, is what is not happening, which is creating the problem. So the earlier government facilitated dialogue between and among all the groups, I think the better for all of us. It is only then that we could begin, in the words of Dr. Nchudansu, to transform the conflict.
All right.
So far, the conflict is being resolved only through the use of force by the parties or by the government that has deployed these security forces, not to bring the people around the table.
All right.
And let them now find ways and means of coming to a common understanding of how they are going to coexist in that enclave.
Right. Thank
Part
you.
of the problem I've said elsewhere is that I think the English word is polyglot. In that wider Boku area, you have Kusasis, and I've read somewhere that Kusasis are about 75% in the west, and then 45% of the population in the east. But you also have Bises, you have Bimobes, you have, Moshis, and then you have Mamprusis. Any geographical area on this planet where you have in a small enclave a number of different ethnic identities, you are likely to have conflict. And therefore, we cannot put this Boku conflict in the fridge and only address the symptoms and think that, okay, that will be the end.
Okay.
If that would be the end, as you suggested, the Kusasi Conference 1931, Mamprusi Conference 32 would have resolved the issue. But the actual outcome of that was that it was a strategy for the Englishman, the colonist, to be able to find an arrangement where they can deal with a powerful king. I mean, that is what has been researched.
All right, Prof.
It doesn't work. So to find other ways of making sure that the balance of power is in the interest or favorable to all the parties.
All right. Thank you very much, Colonel Festus Obwaji. He's author, conflict security analyst. He's with the UNDP. He's a consultant on disarmament. South Sudan, adjunct member, Center on Democratic Transitions, Ghana, and former member, Save the Children International Military Advisory Group. And Victor Doke is lecturer, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for sharing your expertise on this with us. And we hope that those at the forefront of policy and operation implementation have taken notes. Now, let me get brief comments from my guests who are willing to make very brief comments to do so. I qualified that because of you. Is Clara on now? Hello, Clara.
Hello, yeah, I'm on. I've
right.
actually been.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, Clara, what do you say? What should be done? It looks like we keep coming back here, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately. First, let me say good morning to your viewers and listeners, to my colleague panelists in the studio. Before I say my thoughts, I must say that I read this news again with a lot of sadness over this issue. My condolences to the families who have lost loved ones, and my condolences to all the people of Boku. And of course, the appeal for peace has been made over and over again for many years now. But we must all admit that appeals for peace alone are not going to resolve the whatever issue that is it. So I have listened to all sides. I've also read a bit about the dispute. And what I find concerning is that at this point, I'm not going to talk to the security issue. I leave that to the security experts, but I will talk about issues of dispute resolution because that is my area. Now, what I find concerning is how we have diagnosed this problem. The reason is that diagnosing a problem is very important to being able to solve it well. If you get the diagnosis wrong, chances of you being able to get a good solution are also not as high. So listening to all sides and reading about it, it appears that we still aren't very clear what the cause of the present conflict is. Whilst some relate it to a conflict, an unresolved conflict, others say that when it comes to the dispute has been resolved, but that this is the work of jihadists or terrorists. Now the question is, so what is it? I think we have to be very honest with ourselves in determining what exactly this is. We've known that there have been unresolved disputes for quite a while. It will be very refreshing if the dispute has been resolved. But I think we need to be very careful and find out whether, in fact, the dispute has been resolved. Now, let me situate our current dispute resolution processes in context. The reason is because if you reflect back to the history, it helps in how we are able to effectively resolve disputes. My co-two panelists, Colonel Festus Obwaji and Mr. Victor, have already said a lot about it. I'll just summarize it in respect of the legal system. Now, of course, we all know the colonial situation, and when the colonialists came, of course, that they also ran a parallel system in the sense that they had the colonial administration with the colonial courts for dispute resolution, and then we had the traditional authorities through chieftaincy with also their systems. So there was a kind of parallel system. Now, when it came to effective dispute resolution, the colonial administration was only interested in the bit that they could use for the indirect rule. So they got involved to the extent that it was affecting their business, but they didn't seem to care that much if it wasn't affecting their business. So it was not necessarily working in the interest of the people, but they would come in to use force and to use the at least determine which chieftaincy rule they could use indirect rule to achieve their ends. And so that, in a way, affected the traditional system that we had that was more capable
and
of
in this
handling
case, And in this case, the accusation was that the Mamprusis were sort of the guys who were working for the white man, and the white man more preferred them, and so on.
Okay. So now we would have independence, and we kept the dual system in the sense that we still had the traditional structures and we have the state apparatus. It is our responsibility to now make sure that these systems interact in a way that benefits the people, and that results in effective dispute resolution. It is for that reason that I agree that we have to be more careful and more deliberate in the way we analyze the issue. We need all stakeholders in dispute resolution, because we need to find out, one, is there a dispute or is there not a dispute? If there is a dispute, how do we resolve the dispute? We must, through government must also get involved in the sense that it has to be effectively resolved, so that we find a lasting resolution of that dispute and enforce that resolution. We have a number of dispute resolution mechanisms that we could deploy if we are willing to be painstaking and to really be deliberate and want to resolve this dispute.
Yes, so Clara,
yes.
From where you sit as an expert in alternative dispute resolution, what should they be looking to, assuming they have not explored that already? Is it conciliation? Who can lead a process in this place?
Now, first and foremost, it's actually determining what the dispute is and determining what is important to each side. So that I would be hesitant to recommend a particular mechanism at this stage. Mediation is usually the most popular, in the sense that it is able to get all sides on the table, and then it's more, it provides more room to explore different kinds of resolutions that satisfy everybody. So, of course, even generally you would say, let's go for mediation. But mediation also works depending on the nature of the dispute. So appropriately diagnosing the dispute is critical to being able to effectively choose a mechanism that would work for the effective resolution of the conflict, so that we can have peace for all of us. I don't think anybody wants to see loss of lives of any person in Boku.
Okay.
So I would say, yes, it's unfortunate, but we must get back to the table and honestly decide what is the cause of what is going on now.
All right, thank you. Anybody wants to say something in a minute or something, so we move on?
Well, as I indicated to you, I am a product of the Kusak traditional area, so to speak, which encapsulates the 6 districts to the east of the Upper East region. I'm a very sad person, you know. You can't go to Timpani without going through Boko. Timpani is my constituency.
That's right.
You can't go through, and remember that all of us are under Bokunaba.
That's right.
With the overlord of the whole area. It's a very, very sad situation. I told you that I am very hesitant in commenting on this issue because of the very endemic nature of the conflict.
Even your classmate, who doesn't come from there, you see how cautious
he's very cautious about it. It's a very, very dicey, very, very dicey situation. Samson, when I saw the horrific pictures of the people who were killed, I really couldn't sleep. It was a very pathetic situation. So commiserations to the families of the deceased persons. I believe that we've reached a stage where, apart from human effort, we need divine intervention in Boku. Apart from human effort, we need divine intervention in Boku. So you mentioned specifically even about some of the faith-based organizations trying to pull out of Boku and etc. My church is one, Presbyterian Church of Ghana, to which I am legal advisor. We manage the Boku Hospital and all that.
A very important installation.
Yes, very, very important. As of now, it is operating at less than 10% capacity. and all that. So it's a very sad situation. And probably, the things that we hear may be underreported. The deaths and etc. Yeah. This level of destruction and the level of tension probably are underreported.
I've heard people, what I know. I've heard people tell me directly that almost on a weekly basis, they can count a number of deaths.
Yes. So I think that government has stated through the Minister for Defense their actions and intentions and etc. And we need to actually put all soldiers to the wheel. And I am very excited that on this particular issue, there has not been political parties taking advantage and trying to play deep politics and etc. People are resolved and united to see that Boku gets peace. In fact, it is one of the towns with the potential for economic growth in this country. But as we speak today, we can't say same anymore. I'm just pleading on bended knees to the parties to put the weapons down. And I heard one of them talking about exploring the options of litigation and etc. As we speak, there is no matter in any court in Ghana, be it the chieftaincy tribunals or the Supreme Court or Court of Appeal. There's no matter pending. To the best of your knowledge, is there any matter pending about the Boku skin? No, there's no matter pending in any court as we speak about the Boku skin and etc. So I'm just pleading as a native of the area that I'm also pleading with the security agencies. Their absence there probably could have led to genocide and etc. But their presence, they should also manage it professionally as they have indicated. I mean, the casualties, some of the casualties, to my own estimation, are very, very needless. And we have to try to do, because one life lost is very, very important. You know, in the deaths that occurred, I understand some of them, even 3 or 4 people from one family and all that. So we are just pleading with everybody from both sides, and we are pleading with the security to do all they can in their professional capacity to ensure that they bring peace to Boku.
All right, thank you very much. Yep.
Samson, I'm equally devastated by the new twist to this decades-long Boku crisis. Very unfortunate that innocent citizens should lose their lives over what appears to be a chieftaincy dispute, which is degenerating into other issues. I think the security analysts we've had this morning have done justice to the issues. And listening to them, 3 issues are pertinent and worth amplifying. The first is that not much is being done by government to address the root causes of the problem. Yes, we know that the Court of Appeal has pronounced on this matter, and a challenge of that decision in the Supreme Court was later withdrawn. But we still know that there are disputes over who has the right to sit on the Boku skin. When you speak to the factions, you get a sense of their contrary positions on this matter that they are very passionate about. But it is about time that they do away with their entrenched positions and are forced to the negotiation table. I don't care how we call it, whether it is conciliation or mediation. There must be some form of constructive engagement under the auspices of government to ensure that the root causes are addressed. As we speak, nothing is being done to address the lingering root causes, and that for me leaves much to be desired. The second point that I want to highlight is the issue of intelligence. Samson, very quickly. I cannot for the life of me understand why we should have the BNI, national security, and all our security agencies in Boku, and yet to date, we cannot gather intelligence on the people who are fueling this conflict, supplying ammunition and arms to these factions. That for me is totally unacceptable, and the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Defense must sit up. Finally, I want to appeal to you, our friends in the media. I think that even with regards to concerns about the professionalism of the military and the harrowing accounts we've learned from the MP of the area about how citizens who are supposed to be protected by these military men are being executed and all that. I think that the media should focus more on what is happening in Boko. If we have you in the ground giving us real-time reports on what is happening there,
thank you.
I believe it can help bring some
Thank you very much. And
peace
Seth Kwamboateng reminds me of how he has been to the ground a number of times, and even through the work of the media on multimedia, sought to bring some, semblance of peace in Boko. I believe that maybe, perhaps, we should have one whole show dedicated to the Boko situation and bring those who matter to deal with them in a manner that will bring significant attention of the state to that area and the people themselves to resolving it. But as we speak, we are told that there's been an ending spate of violence, dozens of people have been killed, properties worth millions of cedis have been destroyed, and development has stalled, and the government has had to allocate significant resources that could have been used for development towards the deployment of security forces to maintain law and order in Boko. We take a break. When we return, individual bondholders are still, where are they? Where exactly are they? With the support of pensioners and Chief Justice supporting them, former Chief Justice supporting them in their protests at the Ministry of Finance.
You don't just jump at the low-hanging fruit. And the people whose money is in your hand, and you're going to tell them, okay, your money is in my hand, and this is how you're going to get it back. It's rude, it's wicked, it's unlawful. It's not right. It lacks good faith. It lacks humanity. Because, we are sitting here because we are well enough to come. Do you know how many people are languishing at home? Do you know how many people who are not even, they are in such a bad state, they are not even aware of what's going on, but it's their investments that have been keeping them alive. You don't know, you don't care. And you do not touch the old people. You do not touch the funds of the aged when you have not done other things. You have not done due diligence. You have not checked on what other things you do. We are not your last resort. You haven't reached the point of last resort. If they think they've reached the point of last resort, they should prove it to us and show us why this is the only solution. And in any case, it's not a lawful solution. So they should not even go there.
I'm an old man. I have so many type of diseases. I can't tell you all. But I spend a lot on drugs. And very soon, I'll start dialysis. I don't need their money, my own money. I want to live on. Nobody would look after me. I lost my wife. I live alone. Who will look after me? That means government wants me to get rid of me.
Right. So this is how it gets and where it gets. That the immediate past Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, Sophia Akufo, who's been president of the African Court before, twice or so, that she takes a decision, and that is that pensioners have been demonstrating, protesting, or picketing at the Ministry of Finance every day. And on the 5th day, she decides that this is where I want to spend my time. And yesterday, the country, just too many people felt so proud of what she did. Let's begin with Clara. Clara, so because forgive me, because of where you stand, there are those who have been focusing on what she has done and asked the question. She said it, that look, she is in a privileged position. She has better terms of pension. Yes, she has bonds. She has money in bonds. She doesn't feel that she will be as affected as other people. And yet she feels that it is time for her to get in. What's ran through your mind when you heard the news that it was the former Chief Justice who had joined the pensioners there and using language that was so clear and direct?
Thank you very much, Samson. When this whole debt restructuring started, I promised myself that I would not say anything with respect to this issue. But I resent a little my decision not to speak on the issue on this occasion. First of all, I want to commend all the pensioners for coming out to make their voices heard, to use the democratic rights that we have in the Constitution to picket. This clearly states the reason why we advocate for democratic spaces and that we advocate for rights. It is so that everybody, because when you protect the rights of one person, it protects the rights of everybody. So I am proud of them and I wish to commend them for coming out to make their voices heard in spite of their age. I also want to commend the former Chief Justice for using a powerful voice that she has for the greater public good, for a lot of other people who may be voiceless. So I commend the Chief Justice highly for joining in picketing and then capturing saliently and very well articulated with conviction the pain of the pensioners in this situation. Look, the measure of every society, we know, is how it treats its vulnerable. And I think the former Chief Justice captured it in the best ways that I could imagine. We just can't throw our vulnerable under the bridge. These are people who are old. Then we just go after, because this is more or less really, it's very similar to going for somebody's property because you can. It's because you have the power to do so. We should be protecting our vulnerable, the vulnerable in society, rather than taking advantage of them because we think they don't have what it takes to fight for their rights. So I want to commend the former Chief Justice and the pensioners for this very bold step that they have taken. It could not have been easy, particularly for someone in her position, to speak the way that she did. So I want to say thank you to the former Chief Justice of Ayekufu for using her voice when it matters the most for the benefit of all pensioners in the country. And look, like she noted, I hesitated. Part of the reason I didn't want to speak is you don't want people to come and ask you, are you a lawyer? Are you an economist? But there are some of the things that, yes, as lawyers, we are good at asking questions and at relevant questions. The question the former Chief Justice also noted is, it is not as if you came out to us and said, look, this is where we are. We are looking for ways to go out of there. These are the options that we have. These are the gifts and takes. These are the positives of this option and the negatives of this option. So looking at all of these options, this is what we think will work the most. I haven't seen that. You've just come with, well, this is what we want to do. So yeah, you come on board. Or well, if you don't come on board, well, you are going to suffer. As the former Chief Justice noted, I don't think this is the best way to go about it. I think what the economists should be doing is not going after people who express their views and then showing whether they are competent to speak to the issue or not, but to address the things that they say. And most importantly, we should be seeing options that work, options that protect the people, rather than options that throw the people under the bus. Okay. And the current, of course, the issue that they are fighting, yes, I think it's a legitimate cause. I think we need to go back to the drawing table and find more, not just lawful and humane ways of handling the crisis that we are at the moment.
Senor, thank you very much for making time to join us. Senor Jose is convener of the Individual Bondholders Forum. You know, the pensioners have been going to this place all week, and they have really broken people's hearts. We have seen people sit on TV and literally cry whilst they are attempting to discuss this issue and thinking about the fact that these are our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, you know, having to be at this place and asking and begging the states, when they are the ones who have put their money to the state, to help the state rather, they are there begging. From what you have been telling your people, now the deadline is over. Yesterday, the CJ appeared there, and I believe that is what forced the finance minister to engage with them again, but his position has not changed. What do you say?
I think that this DD would write many stories, and it won't be good for leadership as a country. The picketing of our pensioners is an embarrassing scene. It's an unfortunate scene. I'm happy that the Chief Justice was there yesterday. It just gives us hope that we still have people with conscience and influence at the same time. A lot of that has been missing in this country, and I think that gives us some sense of hope that things would really get better with voices like that being heard. But on the issue of the picketing in particular, it's an immaterial activity relative to this DD. It's great with the advocacy and the optics of it. The finance minister was clear, Samson, and let's just face it. All his press releases post our advocacy jointly that one, individuals were free to participate. He also said two, if you decide to hold on to your old bonds, I will pay. Three, he has also said that he can't guarantee what happens on the secondary market. The truth is that the finance minister has never guaranteed the tradability or the liquidity on the secondary market. So that submission itself was moot. Then, four, right here, if you want to participate, these are the options you have. I think that we were asking too much from the minister. He has said that you are free not to participate.
Why was it important then to exempt others?
It wasn't important to exempt anybody because technically he hadn't exempted anybody till the DD of DD3.
No, my question to you is, Labour stood up and insisted that if pension funds were not exempted, there would be hell. The minister...
Yes, so maybe he went to respond to hell because all the pension funds needed to...
That has been exempted. Initially, it was not exempted. It has been exempted. So what is if exemption is...
Hold on,
if exemption has no importance or significance,
it's immaterial.
Why did they have to fight over the exemption?
No, you see, one, for pension funds, they were never exempted in the first round. They were never exempted in the second round. If you read the memorandum, it's actually in the third round that they have actually been exempted.
That's my question.
But yes, for us as individuals, the government has been categorical that individual bondholders are free not to participate. It never said banks are free not to participate. It never said pension funds are free not to participate. It said individual bondholders are free not to participate. And in any case, this was a voluntary exercise.
Voluntary, you
then
know.
The minister,
Come off it. You know it is not voluntary, really.
Exercise.
You know that you have said on this same platform that the voluntary was a deceptive word.
So that's what I told you that in the you are right. That's what I told you that in the beginning, the minister had done it voluntary by force. But after our advocacy and our engagement, and his own public utterances and his press statement, the thing has now become voluntary. All that we needed to do is to get people to understand the implications of it and not go and participate. Self-exemption was the first option that the finance minister gave us. Check the press release, I've forgotten the date, I think that before the DD3 was issued. It was clear after our meetings with him that one, you individuals free to participate, so it means you have a self-exemption option. 2, I will pay. 3, if you want to participate, these are the conditions. 15% for those who are pensioners, 10% over 5 years for those who are not pensioners.
When you started, when you started
Yeah.
as individual bondholders working together with the other groups, your watchword was exempt.
Absolutely.
If it was not significant, why was that what you were pursuing?
No, Samson, times changed. That was significant then when it was voluntary by force. But when the man has met you and told you and given you the assurances, gone out to make public statements that if you hold on to your old bonds, he will pay, I think that was a problem anymore. In the beginning, you have been
on this platform. You have been on this platform with Deputy Minister Dr. John Kuma.
Absolutely.
And John Kuma has said that we can't guarantee, the tradability of your bonds. Your bonds will be worthless.
Like I said,
if you don't participate, it will be worthless. Are these people not entitled to think that, to say that we are not trusting what you are telling us now? Exempt us rather.
So let's take a back step and why everybody had to jump into the advocacy. First, you started saying it was voluntary. Then you said that our existing bonds will be worthless. You weren't talking about it being tradable or not tradable. That's a technical matter. So when you start that, then you feed into the perception that you intend to really go after us who will not submit to this your voluntary process. So we refused to. And we came out and we fought it. Then we have the minister come out to say, okay, the terms that we gave you, we are changing it. But the first thing you need to understand is that it is voluntary. For you, you are free not to participate. And for the first time, he comes out to say he will pay every old bond. And he was referring to the individuals. At that point, it was clear that now the thing had moved from voluntary by force to voluntary. His first option is that you self-exempt. So for me, and for us at IBF, our advocacy was to educate people so that they go and self-exempt.
Yes,
and I think that the data is out. I think that you have put up data which is inaccurate, I should probably.
Again, you were fighting that if people didn't sign up, they were in a precarious situation that if they took up suits, the government has insulated all its assets. So you cannot even get a judgment, any property of government to attach.
Absolutely.
That has changed?
It hasn't changed. That is why we spent our last week educating people why they shouldn't submit to the DDE. We spent time educating them why you shouldn't sign on to the DDE. I didn't see us going to get any absolute exemption for individuals. The question here, Samson, for all you know, somebody with 15% who thinks he trusts that legal construct may want to do it. Let him go. My job is to let you know the risk. Let you know that new DDE, not in your best interest.
How do you trust a man who is giving you these assurances and has broken his promises, is defaulting on his bonds?
In fact, this is my favorite question these days. One, if you don't trust government and you have 2 contracts, do you go for a contract that is tighter or the one that is weaker or loose? Francis, Samson, you're a lawyer. Won't you get your contract even tighter when you don't trust? Your client doesn't trust a counterparty in the contract. It's simple.
What is the meaning of a contract?
Hold on.
What is the meaning of a contract when one party can get up unilaterally and decide what he wants to do with it, and then I begin to suffer and have to beg him?
Allow me to walk through the logic. I'm saying that I don't trust you. and I have an existing contract with you. You're offering me a new contract. That even gives me a weaker legal standing. Question, which of the contracts will you choose? I'll keep my old contract because that gives me better options. Then two, somebody says, I trust government. If you trust government, then you should trust what Oforiatta and John Kuma said, that they will pay. In that instance, the question again, which of the options give you the best economic return? It's the old bonds. So either way, left or right, it's the old bonds. But we spent our time educating our people. Just do not submit to it. The most important thing, and I'm happy the Chief Justice is in, and she restated that what was going on was illegal if our rights are not enforced as people who did not submit to the DDE. We have a legal course of action.
All right.
And the minister is compelled to honor his obligation.
Well, that's another matter. You can have a
judgment.
You can have a judgment on paper. That's just on paper. You may not get anything out of it. Hold on. Dr. Edu Anyenini is convener of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. Dr. Edu Anyenini, the senior is telling us here now that all these 5 years that you have been at the Ministry of Finance in picketing has been an act of ignorance and useless, really. You just wasted your time.
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Edu Anyenini, did you hear my question?
I think, I'm sorry to say, Senior does not really understand appreciate the difference between exemption, the issuer exempting you, and the you yourself exempting yourself. You first asked, why were they asking for exemption? And I'm sorry if people think that they didn't know from day one that this exchange was voluntary. I can't understand why people are saying that they didn't know the exchange was voluntary. It has been voluntary from day one. It has been voluntary from day one. Let us not pollute the minds of people. It has been voluntary from day one. Nobody said it was compulsory. It has been voluntary from day one. That one must be drawn home. From day one, it is voluntary. And now let me explain the difference between. And I said this to the minister yesterday, that the minister is a market player or was a market player. I, as being a market regulator, have worked for SEC 1999 to 2004, and then again from 2011 to 2016. I understand the market. And I said, Minister, you and I understand the market, securities market, and these issues. And you know, and I know, that there is a difference between issuer exemption and you self-exempting yourself. And I've been explaining this. Let me explain again so that people who don't understand would understand. When the issuer exempts you, the issuer is saying, as for you, the debt that I owe you, the bonds that you are holding, I don't have any problems dealing with it the way I have been dealing with it previously. I'm going to deal with it like that. I am not restructuring that. It will stand as it is, and I will continue to obey everything that is every term. You have no problem. I will not restructure that because I can handle everything relating to your coupons, your principal, everything. So I will not restructure it. It's not part of the restructuring. These ones that I am having problems going through, that I realized one day I will not be able to pay coupon or maturity the way it is, that I am restructuring. If you don't come in under the restructuring and you decide to stay on your own, then you have been told, I have already told you, that as for this group of bonds, I will not be able, I'll find it difficult to service. That is why I'm asking you to bring in for a new one. So if you decide you won't bring in for a new one, your stand is different. You have self-exempted yourself. you are not like the person that I, the issuer, has exempted or have exempted from the program. So I'm telling people, and I've used the term for it. If you exempt me, and the time comes for you to pay both coupon and principal, and you are unable, then I say, but are you not the same person who say, as for me, as for my boss, you don't have a problem with it, so you won't restructure? Why are you not telling me this? That is where the investor will be asking the issuer. If you are the other side, and your bonds, there's a coupon to be paid or principal to be paid, and you go and the issuer says, I don't have the means to do that, the issuer rather will tell you, yes, that is why I told you, bring it for a new one, because I'm not going to be able to deal with the old one in that manner. I am now calling, that is why I started calling that bond. That bond will become, I told you so bond.
Okay.
I told you so bond.
Dr. Edouard Anyenini.
I told you I will not be able to handle.
All right, Dr. Edouard Anyenini. Yes, as a lawyer, this is where you have gotten to. The finance minister sought to listen to you yesterday again, but actually just repeated to you that there was no point. There was nothing that could be done again. So what is it? It's over. The process is done and dusted, isn't it? Did I lose Dr. Edouard Anyenini?
Yes, I'm on.
Yeah, you heard me?
No.
The process is done and dusted. You didn't get what you asked for.
Yes.
So what's up?
We'll continue. You see, what people should understand is that we want a cover. This exemption is to give us cover, a proper cover.
So where are you continuing? Where are you continuing to? Are you going to the IMF or where? The minister says
we will continue to pick it until the minister gives us exemption. We know the difference between exemption by the issuer and exemption by ourselves or self-exemption. If other people don't understand, it's not their own problem.
All right.
I understand that has been the job I have done by the major part of my life as a working person.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I need to get back to the studio, get a brief, some comments, and then we can move on. We have a number of issues to look at. Yes, begin with you, Sami Jemfi. How have you appreciated what has been going on so far?
What we are currently experiencing is a classical case of predatory governance.
The minister says,
this is not Boame Namemwao. This is predatory governance, where the government we have elected to protect us and to turn our fortunes around has turned around to prey on us by expropriating our hard-earned monies, the lifetime savings of Ghanaians, monies that are meant for the health needs or the rent needs or educational needs of citizens of this country. That is rude, that is wickedness, and that is unacceptable. You see, our brother Senor is getting something wrong, and that is where I want to start my submission from. He would have been right if the finance minister and the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government were saying that you are free not to sign onto the DDEP, their so-called debt exchange program, which in my view is an indirect expropriation program and not a debt exchange program. He would have been right if that is what government is saying. But in the second amended and restated exchange memorandum, Samson, government is saying that yes, you are free to sign or not to sign. But if your bonds mature before I conclude this process, I'm not going to pay you. Hasn't Senor seen those provisions in the second amended and restated agreement?
Right. Yeah.
And if I can read those relevant provisions, it reads that eligible holders holding eligible bonds maturing on or prior to the settlement date. The settlement date is when government will be concluding these whole processes, and I will define what they mean by settlement date. Okay, they are saying will not receive a final interest payment except for accrued interest payable for tendering holders as described below, and a final principal payment regardless of whether an eligible holder has tendered or not on such maturing eligible bonds. So they are saying that if your bonds mature before the settlement date, they are not going to pay you what you are entitled to. So this is not voluntary, as Senor would have us believe. If you look at the definition of settlement date in the second amended and restated memorandum, it says that settlement date means 14 February 2023 or such date as the Republic shall designate. So there is no certainty with regards to that settlement date. That's number one. And number two, government is not telling these bondholders when it even intends to pay them, okay, their monies. Because as a standard, government is saying we won't pay. On the 6th of February this year, there were some bondholders whose maturities, coupons matured, and government had to pay. Till date, government hasn't paid them. And they have not been told when government to pay them. So the picture our brother Senor is surprisingly painting this morning, for me, is not accurate at all. You see, Samson, you have a situation where pensioners who have worked so hard for this country, who are supposed to enjoy the fruit of their labor on retirement, enjoy a restful and peaceful retirement, are picketing in the scorching sun at the precincts of the Ministry of Finance. The President of the Republic has not made any statement about this. The Vice President and Chairman of the Economic Management Team, Baumia, is dead silent on the matter. And the Ministry of Finance is telling them that you can go to hell. My word is final. There is nothing I will do about your concerns. That is unacceptable, and that should not be justified. You see, people think that this so-called debt exchange program is the panacea to our economic woes. I disagree. It is not the panacea to our economic woes. And if we do not address the issues that have brought the country on its knees, it doesn't matter how many times we do debt exchange, we will return into this same ditch.
Senor and his group and the others, they've done the maths, and they've shown that, you know, there is more that we can do than pursuing
exactly
this, or even pursuing the individual bondholders.
Exactly.
Right.
Because you see, we shouldn't have gotten here in the first place if we had done the right things. Samson, we are talking about a government that is the most resourced government in the history of this country, the luckiest government. They've had unprecedented oil revenue, unprecedented tax revenue, unprecedented borrowed funds. And what do they have to show for? A destroyed economy with interest rates hovering around 45%, debt to GDP over 100%, you know, and a draconian debt exchange program that seeks to expropriate the investments of people. And that is because of the reckless borrowing and expenditures they have engaged in the last 6 years. That is the fundamental root cause of the problem we have on our hands. And until that is addressed, what we are engaged in is like fetching water with a basket. These people are only looking for 3 billion. That is why they are doing this debt exchange program. 3 billion. COVID alone gave them $6 billion. $6 billion. The IMF gave us a $1 billion rapid credit facility in 2020 and another $1 billion special drawing rights facility in 2021. They have wasted all that. The World Bank has given us over $1.3 billion. Check how much the European Union, the African Development Bank have given us. The problem is not money. The problem has to do with the government's unbridled penchant for profligacy, misplaced priorities. How can you be asking pensioners, individual bondholders, to accept austerity measures like haircuts on their coupons and all that? At a time you are funding a $450 million so-called National Cathedral project. You've taken taxpayers' money, 133 million Ghana cedis, and you've given it to David Ajayi and his people just to draw a cathedral building and supervise its construction. After spending...
So Justice Sophia Kufu spoke about how the government is not showing that it is doing anything to deserve the pensioner to support.
Exactly.
And she said the first thing, if you want to do anything about debt restructuring, is to look at what you have, and she says what you can cut.
Yeah.
And she's not seeing that.
And Samson, even before I talk about what you can cut, the first thing is to take responsibility for the problem and to dismiss those who, through their actions and inactions, have driven us into this mess. You see, Kenoforiata is a very disease he's pretending to be curing. And so long as he continues in office as finance minister, we will be kidding ourselves if we think that we will get out of this problem. He must be dismissed, and the Bawumia-chaired economic management team that has supervised this mess dissolved immediately. We need competent and credible hands to manage the crisis we have currently. That should be the starting point.
Well, the president thinks the competent hand is Kenoforiata.
And that is why we are here.
So his own party people have said what he should do. He says,
okay, Samson, if I can just conclude on these points. You see, as we speak, last year alone, in 9 months, government spent 15 million Ghana cedis on purchasing car tires and batteries at the presidency. They spent 51 million Ghana cedis on just fuel at the presidency in 9 months. They spent a whopping 4.8 million Ghana cedis on just one cabinet retreat. And another 6.5 million Ghana cedis, equivalent to 65 billion cedis, on the procurement of new vehicles. They have paid Kari Samis 28.2 million Ghana cedis to coordinate the building of a biblical museum and a garden in these times. And all they have to show for these millions of monies they have spent on the so-called cathedral project is a big hole sitting in the center of Accra. What am I saying? I'm saying that until government set its priorities right, stop these reckless expenditures, sack Kenoforiata and dissolve the economic management team, and approach these discussions with honesty, candor, we are not getting out of this problem today or tomorrow. And so I want to commend the Chief Justice and the pensioners. They must be supported, they must be encouraged. This so-called debt exchange program must be suspended forthwith. And all well-meaning Ghanaians, whether you are directly affected or not, you must join this struggle because it will affect you one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Franka.
I thought we would look at the issues in detail and educate our people. We're not run straight into politics and all that and scoring politics.
You call this politics?
Etc. Anyway, that's not the point. First, let me react to the issue of the former Chief Justice. I mean, most of us kept referring to her as Chief Justice. She's not Chief Justice. She's the former Chief Justice, actually, from the discussion that we've had. She talked about the fact that government saw their area as a low-hanging fruit that could be easily harvested, and that's an opportunity that should not be taken advantage of, etc. Let me state my position on this matter. When it started, you remember, I don't know whether you do, that there was a statement from the Office of Attorney General, advice from the Office of Attorney General. Yeah. We've conveniently ignored this when we are discussing this matter. And for me, that was very pivotal to the resolution of this matter.
It's not ignored. If you want to emphasize it, then you do.
Let me do.
The advice that...
Something the advice... it was very clear.
Voluntary.
Absolutely.
Yes, but we knew that the voluntary was not voluntary.
Yes.
I'm saying that the Office of Attorney General acted excellently on the matter. When I read the opinion, I gave thumbs up to Dami for that excellent advice. And remember that in our type of governance, it's very difficult for one minister to look the other in the face and tell him A or B. And that is even the reason.
Be sincere with your viewers that the Attorney General could have advised otherwise, that there ought to be a law to expropriate, unilaterally take away people's accrued rights, and there will be any law that will agree to that.
No, you're not.
So the Attorney General simply confirmed to the Finance Ministry and the government what the law allows and what the law does not allow. And he knows the law.
Yes.
And he could not have told them that you can do it compulsory.
Probably if you are allowed me to, if you are allowed me to land, if you are allowed me to land something,
right, anyway.
If you are allowed me to land, you may not have brought this law interjection at all.
Okay.
What I was seeking to say is that it was a bold decision for him to have done that openly and then threw it out there for us to discuss.
Was there an option? That's my point.
In other circumstances in the
was
past,
there an option?
There may not have been anything that will come out to us at all from the Attorney General's office. In the past, there have been circumstances such as this. You find no opinion from the Attorney General's office, especially if the Attorney General's opinion is contrary to what is being professed by the minister.
For example, you speak about the past. What example do you have in mind?
I'm saying that circumstances in the past, many circumstances in the past, we have seen situations where a certain position is taken by a minister of state or a government institution that you don't hear from the Office of Attorney General. And I'm saying that the advice you are talking about, Samson, hold it, that he could not have said otherwise. I agree.
Yes.
He could not have said otherwise.
Which lawyer will embarrass himself that way?
He could not have said otherwise. And he came out with that. But that also influenced the decision of the finance minister in revising his previous stance. It influenced it. Otherwise, the previous stance was what he intended to carry out from the beginning all through to the end.
That's not what I saw in the advice. In the advice, the finance minister did not say, I want to do this by compulsory, by legislation. The finance minister was saying, these options, what is your advice?
Yes.
And the Attorney General says, you can't use a legislative process.
Yes.
So, at all costs, you must do it through a voluntary process.
Voluntary process.
Yeah, so the finance minister did not say we are going to do it.
So when he actually gave this piece of advice to the finance minister, the things began to change. And that is why you have people like Senor Jose and others now revising their positions from the very previous intransigence that they actually carried out, which was legitimately within their rights anyway.
Intransigence?
Yes. Yes, I'm using the word, without reservation. You see, point is this, Samson. This debt exchange program. My personal opinion.
This small point. Sincerely, that it was possible for any Attorney General to think otherwise and say that regardless of your accrued rights.
I've said no. I said no to you.
So
I don't need us to belabor the point. I said no to that.
Okay.
You see, my position on this matter, and Samson, let me be very candid with you. I disagree with the finance ministry to a very large extent on some of those decisions.
Okay.
I don't support it. Especially on the pensioners. I don't support it at all. Because they are vulnerable people. My position is not that what I'm saying by virtue of this, what I'm espousing now, I am supporting hook, line, and sinker everything that is coming from the finance ministry. That cannot be. In fact, that is not, it will not allow me to have a peaceful sleep. Because I think that we should not be touching the pensioners at all. Look, some of the things that we saw, and looking at the age and the way they are vulnerable and all that, and the way they were exposed and etc., for me, it's so sympathetic. And it is unreasonable for us to insist that we would attach their funds and all that. That is my personal position on that matter. And I think that as we go on, the positions are being revised. Save what you have just put across, that he says, look, you can go to hell or whatever you want to do, you can do. There's nothing I can do about it. It's closed and etc. That is not the thing I got from the general thing. I think that the engagement needs to be enhanced so that we reach a consensus. We need to engage more and reach a consensus. And believe you me, this is a contract.
If I enter into a contract for the individual bondholders,
yes,
what he gave, so to speak, was that now all individual bondholders who are below the age of 59 years will be offered instrument with a minimum maturity of 5 years instead of 12 years and a 10% coupon rate. Then all retirees, including those retiring in 2023, will be offered instruments with a minimum maturity of 5 years instead of 12 years and 15% coupon rate. So this was what he offered. But some of them, almost all of them, largely still say we are not interested. We just want an exemption.
You see, one thing that we seem to be losing sight of is also the fact that that is the man holding the kitty. And he's looking at the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the very serious economic circumstances we find ourselves in, and probably being realistic with the bondholders and trying to let them know that this is what is practical, and this is what is feasible, this is what is possible, this is what can be done to ameliorate the situation. Because remember that if you sign up to an agreement that you cannot implement, then of course you have deceived the other parties, and that will not be good enough. So he's probably being realistic with the people and saying that, look, we are going to carry out this exchange program, and this is the very realistic ways by which we can actually fulfill our side of the contractual bargain. And remember that if you enter into a contract with another party, and in this particular case, the state and then those individuals and institutions and etc., they've entered into these contracts, and the contracts are bound or are binding on the parties that have entered into it, except if you think that one party has acted in a manner that has infringed your rights and you can go to court to vindicate it.
Right.
But the circumstances of this matter, I think we should be very cautious. That the finance minister probably would not have just said that we are taking a certain decision without recourse to the fact that he's looking at the circumstances of our economy and what is in the kitty and how to be able to manage it going forward, so that in trying to solve a problem, you don't create another one.
Yeah, there are those who are pointing out to you that in this budget, you have actually increased your budgetary allocation for certain, projects that you could have reduced them in this situation. So this is where you could have saved money. You would have saved millions of Ghana cedis so that you don't have to worry these people.
Yes.
Why is he not thinking about that?
That's a very good point you are making. But you remember also that we have Parliament. When these things get there, Parliament itself has the right to reject some of them. And they did reject some of the things in Parliament. You remember that even at the committee level, the allocation to the cathedral was rejected. You remember? And some other allocations were rejected by Parliament. And that's the representatives of the people.
All right.
So the finance minister doesn't carry the thing there and just dumps it and it starts operating. It is also for our parliamentarians to debate it, vote on it, and where they find that it is not in the public interest, get it defeated.
Right.
Samson.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but we have to take a break here. I'm sorry, we have to take a break here. We've spent quite a bit of time, and we have 2 more issues to look at. Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. When we return, a bit of this discussion dovetails into the question of government not cutting size or downsizing, as is being called for by many. The Pentecost charismatic group have now joined that call. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And my guests who are staying for the 2 other issues that we are looking at, the Attorney General's letter to the Auditor General. But before that, we are looking at the quote-unquote ministerial reshuffle that many commentators say it was a missed opportunity for the president to do things right by Ghanaians. So my guests who are here to continue with that discussion, Joseph Dundiok Pemka and Clara Berry Kasati, as well as Sami Jamfi of the National Democratic Congress. And thanks to Senyor Hosi, who is a convener of the Individual Bondholders Forum. Thanks also to our previous guests that we have spoken to. Right, so the president did something this week. Some of the ministers who have resigned, he nominated others to replace them. So you have the Member of Parliament for Adansia Sokwa, K.T. Hammond, nominated, or is it appointed, to replace the Trade Minister, Alain Shremanting. You have Member of Parliament for Abetifi, Brian Champong, to replace the Food and Agriculture Minister. You have a Member of Parliament for Karaga, Mohammed Amin Adam, who was stationed at the Energy Ministry as Deputy Minister, now being given a new job. He has been appointed Minister of State designate at the Finance Ministry. Nominated, yeah. He is to replace Charles Edubuahen, who had to exit on the back of the Anas video. Stephen Asamoah Boateng has been nominated Minister designate for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. Many said he could have left that place without putting anybody there. Herbert Krapper, who was Deputy Minister at the Trade Ministry, has been moved to Energy Ministry as Deputy Minister Designate. He replaces Mohammed Amin Adam. And then Dr. Stephen Amwa, going to be Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry, replacing Herbert Krapper. Member of Parliament for Ekwapim South, Osei Bonsu Amwa, is nominated as Minister of State Designate at the Local Government and Rural Development Ministry. Many commentators have said that this was a missed opportunity. The president should have taken advantage of the many calls that have been made over the time to rather cut down the size of government. The Pentecostal Council came out and they were very loud about it, saying that that's the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, saying that he should urgently downsize government machinery and cut down on expenditure to start building confidence about his commitment in solving our economic problems.
First of all, thank you very much. There is no communication from the presidency that has stated that what has happened is final. There's no communication, and let's put that in perspective. If there had been a communication that this brings to finality the government's intention to reshuffle ministers and etc., then we could say that whatever the cry the other people are asking for is with some justification. But remember that if you look at what has happened carefully, the very reason for it has been because of the resignations that hit government in the last 1 month or so. You recall that the Minister for Trade and Industry, the Venerable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, resigned, and the Minister for Agric also resigned. Then the Minister for Chieftaincy also resigned. You recall that. I think if you look at what happened, I don't call it a reshuffle. It's like he just replaced those who resigned, and then he moved some deputy ministers from one place to the other, and that ended it. Otherwise, specifically, there has not been a reshuffle if you want to respect the word itself, that you move one minister from one ministry to the other and then move another to another ministry and then take out some ministers.
At the level of the deputy,
yes,
done that for Herbert Krapper, yes, and Amin Adam.
Amin Adam. And that is also because Amin Adam has been elevated to a Minister of State at the Finance Ministry. Then that created a vacancy at Energy. Then he moved Krapper from Trade to that place. And in replacing Krapper, he appointed Dr. Stephen Amwa. You know, so if you look at it carefully, for me, I find it that it was just the matter of replacing the resigned ministers with others. And in the course of doing it, some 1 or 2 vacancies may have occurred that he needed to fill. So you will see that, as you indicated in your intro, the former Minister of State at Finance Ministry, Duboahin, because of the incident that happened in his resignation, that has led to Mohammed Amin Adam going to replace him at that particular ministry. And then if you also look at one person who has been a deputy minister from His Excellency President Kufuor through to the last 6 years of Nanado is the Honorable Obi Amwa. And he's been a deputy minister for more than 10 years. And in this particular release, he's been elevated to a Minister of State at the Ministry of Local Government. And you know that the Minister of State is beyond a deputy minister, but still answerable to the minister, the substantive minister at the ministry. That is the organogram, if you so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think that
there's this small bit before we come to the sense that it makes economically or not, and whether it also responds to the cry that has been going on. Stephen Amoah,
yes,
he's known to be a finance person.
Yes,
He's got a PhD in finance. Why should somebody be removed from energy, and then this kind of game so that he goes to trade instead of finance?
Sometimes I think I can't go into the president's mind, but sometimes I think that it is also the combination and regional balance. If you look at the finance ministry, you find that Dr. John Kuma is from Ashanti region, right? So probably if you bring in Stika again to that place, you are going to have two people from Ashanti
Stika is in Shiaso,
exactly.
Kuma is a Juso.
Yes. So probably these are some of the things. You look at the regional balance.
But if you are a minister, you're a minister. It doesn't.
Yes, but
the regional balance should not be in the ministry.
I agree. But you see, I mean, it's also good that you try to look at the regional balance when you are putting people at a particular ministry. Otherwise, you can end up also having neighbors from 4 constituencies in one region being minister and all deputies.
Yeah.
Because if you say that, that doesn't matter.
So substantively, what do you say to what critics are saying?
Yeah. So for me, what I will say is that we may be calling on His Excellency the President to maybe listen to what the cry of the people, and then maybe do some further reshuffle, move some ministers around from one place to the other, and etc. But the point is, as I keep on saying, he is the coach. He is sitting on the bench and watching the players, the 11 players out there do their best.
They're not in normal times. Professor
I am coming to that.
Professor Adair suggests that he could do with about 40 or so.
I agree with you, but I'm saying that His Excellency the President, we've given him a mandate.
86.
We've given him a mandate. And the mandate we've given him is for him to take us out of our economic troubles and give us prosperity. He says that these are the numbers that I want that will be able to lead us to that land you are clamoring for. So allow me to use those numbers and achieve that which you are clamoring for yourself. If you tell him, go and use 5, and he says that, look, if I use 5, I will be unable to achieve that which you are asking me to do. Allow me to use these numbers because you have given me the mandate. Then we allow him to do that so that we can hold him to his word if he doesn't succeed. But if you allow him to go for 20 people to manage affairs, and at the end he doesn't say, he says, look, it was just pressure that I had to answer to. Otherwise, I couldn't have worked with 20 people to achieve which you have given me to achieve.
And when he came, previous presidents were working with lesser, number of ministers, and he came and did 126. Nobody asked him to go there. And then in the second term, he decided to bring it down to 86. Still, it's being said that he can do better than that.
Yes, but I'm saying that, you see, if you give somebody the mandate to do something, as you have been carrying out this job, I'm just going to use Samson as an example, very excellently for the past years. You are still on your chair. If you had faltered, probably you would not be on the chair. So His Excellency the President is responding to two things. One, a mandate that has been given to him by Ghanaians to govern this country. And he says that I can play this game well by using these people. And remember that some of them, for example, look at my good friend, Brian Achampo, who is going to Agric. One of the fantastic persons that I have worked with in Parliament over years. He was never given any place. Until now, he's been put at the Ministry of Agric with his level of experience as a businessman as well, a very successful one at that. You just imagine how he's going to be able to turn around at Agric. You look at my good friend, Katie Hammond, who is going to trade, and his links, international connections, and etc. He can bring that, he has that.
He's got international connections?
Yes, that I know for sure. I know how he'll be able to bring that to bear at the ministry for us to be able to achieve that we are clamoring for.
Isn't it temperamental? Is it good to manage people?
No, you see, that is why sometimes if you're not close to someone, you may draw conclusions that will be wrong. I am very close to the Honorable Katie Hammond, and I know that he listens a lot.
No, but I can use his public conduct to tell.
He takes ideas from people.
I can use his public conduct to tell that.
Yes, but I have worked closely with him in Parliament.
Okay.
In fact, he's one of the persons that I have been so close to that people may not know, as a senior lawyer.
All right.
And then I've worked closely with. I think he's to be able to handle it. I have seen people making some comments about the combination of himself and the Dr. Stephen Amwa at the Ministry of Trade. I've heard those comments.
Okay.
People are putting in social media and all that. But let's give the president the benefit of the doubt. But I think that ultimately, if need arises and the president has to shift the ministers around, he will do so without hesitation at all, in the interest of our dear nation.
Okay. Yes, Sammy.
Samson, this so-called reshuffle has once again highlighted the insensitivity and intransigence of the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. Because, Samson, we all know the times we are living in. This country is in crisis. Our economy has been so mismanaged that today the nation is bankrupt, such that we cannot even service our debts. And we are compelling our creditors to accept crude haircuts on coupon rates they are entitled to.
Those who borrow us money say, who lend us money say, we are not ready, they can't lend us money
Exactly,
anymore.
because we have been downgraded to below junk status and have been locked out of the capital market. We can't even go to the capital market to borrow. That is how serious the crisis we've been plunged into is. And what any responsible government should be doing in times like this is to show prudence and frugality in government's expenditure. It is where we are, it makes it imperative for any responsible leader to downsize, to reduce drastically the size of government and government's expenditure. That is a no-brainer. That is a no-brainer. Yet time and time again, we see continuous intransigence and belligerence on the part of the duty bearers of this country to do the needful. Even in corporate governance, Samson, is it not right that when a company continues to post losses, the reasonable thing it does is to lay off workers? Basic, very trite. You don't have money to pay pensioners who are bondholders, people who cannot work again. You are expropriating their hard-earned monies. And yet you are not ready to cut down on the size of government, something you can easily do. Look at some of the appointments they have made and tell me the sense in these appointments. Samson, tell me why we need a minister of finance, deputy ministers of finance with many assistants, and another minister of state in charge of finance. What is Amin Anta, my good friend, going to do at the Ministry of Finance? What is he going to do there? Ken Ofori-Atta, the cousin of the president who is running this government as if it is his property, has already messed up, and he himself has to be changed. He has not been changed, he's still in office. And you are going to add another Minister of State. The last one we had there.
There are two deputies there already.
Two deputies there already. The last one we had there.
Kuma and Abena.
Exactly. The last one we had there, the appearance fee collection man. What is his name? Charles Aduboy. What was his utility? Apart from using his personal company, Black Star Brokerage, to front government's borrowing on the capital market and receiving millions in transaction advisor fees. What was he doing there? Collecting appearance fees. So why must that slot be filled? I don't see the sense in it. Honestly, why must we still? Let's speak as Ghanaians. Where Ghana has gotten to.
You are sharing with the critics who say the president remains insensitive to what is going on, or that he's out of touch.
You see, he is not aware of the realities of the Ghanaian people.
How is that possible? They say uneasy lies the head that wears
don't
the
you
crown.
see him on television? Anytime you see him, he's either dancing. The last time I saw him on TV, he was shouting A at the size of the backside of a woman. This is not a president who is leading by example. Oh, didn't you see that clip? This is a man who is not I'm not being petty.
Don't be petty.
You see, leadership by example is very, very important. Leadership by example is very, very important. In other jurisdictions, presidents would have resigned. Presidents would have fired those responsible for the mess we find ourselves in. And presidents would have drastically reduced the size of their government and their expenditures. Samson, why do we need a Ministry of Transport, manned by a minister and a deputy, and another Ministry of Aviation, manned by a minister and a deputy, and another Ministry of Railways.
Do we have it again?
Oh, we still have.
Who is the Minister for Aviation now?
Well,
There's no Ministry of Aviation.
Okay, but at least we have Ministry of Railways. We still have Ministry of Railways. So thank you. So why do we still have a Ministry of Transport and a Ministry of Railways? Why can't we merge these two ministries and at least reduce the size of government? At least that you can agree with me on. Because once upon a time, President Mahama manned that same sector with just two ministers, two women. And their output is there for everybody to see. All the ministers you have been appointing, over 126 under your first term, and the many ministers and deputy ministers, not to talk of the hundreds of presidential staffers you have at the presidency. What has been their output? A bankrupt economy, unbearable cost of living, excruciating hardships, interest payments, interest rates of over 45%, unemployment rate of over 15%, an unsustainable public debt, a draconian expropriation of the investments of people. That is their output. And so clearly, what President Akufo-Addo is doing is a slap in the face of the Ghanaian people. It is an insult to our sensibilities. And I reject this suggestion by my good brother, Mr. Penka, that, he is a man in the chair. He should be allowed to do what he likes so that he doesn't complain when he fails. He has already failed. He has already failed. So it doesn't lie in your mouth to tell us that, be patient, be patient. He is in the chair. If the president says that he needs 500 ministers, we should allow him. That is the logic you are expounding. If he says he needs 1,000 ministers, we should allow him. No. As citizens, as the people of this country in whom sovereignty resides, who have given him the very mandate he's exercising for and on our behalf, we reserve the right to tell him that, Mr. President, you can cut these ministries out. You can merge these other institutions to bring down cost so that when others see that, they can have confidence in you and say, look, government means business. They are very much sensitive to the difficult times we find ourselves in. And so let's all be willing to sacrifice so that the country can come out of the crisis we find ourselves.
The member of parliament for Anyenini, and there are people in government who have said this. It doesn't look like we seem to want to listen to them. Dr. Dixon Adomako Kisi has said that President Akufo-Addo's ministerial appointments are not necessarily the cause of the fiscal crisis bedeviling the country. He wants us to look at government's expenditure, and it will reveal rather that it is the capital projects that account for the huge expenditure. He cites the Agenda 111 projects and others rather than we looking at cutting the size of government. How much at all will it give us?
No, Samson, the two are not mutually exclusive. In fact, we have to cut down on the size of government and at the same time cut down on government expenditure. Misplaced expenditures like the 372 million Ghana cedis we have wasted on the cathedral project with nothing to show for example, cannot continue. The 15 million Ghana cedis, that is some 150 billion old Ghana cedis that we spent in only 9 months on car tires and car batteries, cannot continue. So yes, I agree with him, government expenditure must be trimmed down significantly. But at the same time, those of us who say that the size of government must be reduced are making a very important point. Because
and they say this is for the symbolism of it.
Yes, the symbolism of it is important, but also there is some substance, that we can get from it in terms of benefit that we can get from it, because all these ministers, all these presidential staffers are driving V8s, they are driving saloon cars, they are using fuel bought by the state, fuel coupons and so on. They are paying. Come again? So they
have parked their cars now.
Oh, not true at all. We see most of them driving in their V8 still in the city of Accra every day. So when you told us that you had even frozen the purchasing of new vehicles, we've now seen that only last year you spent 6.5 million Ghana cedis on the purchase of new vehicles. It is not about talk. It's not about what you announce. It's about what the figures show. So when we cut down the size of government, at least the monies we use to pay these people, the allowances, the monies we spend on the accommodation and all that will come down drastically. And so the president should listen. But if he will not listen, well, the people of this country will have an opportunity on 7 December 2024 to pass their verdict on his stewardship. And I have no doubt in my mind that they will reject this government, which has become a monument of waste and corruption and a burden to the Kenyan taxpayer. It's not a manifesto. That is the only opportunity we have.
Let's look at the Attorney General's letter to the Auditor General.
Yes.
The former Deputy Attorney General by Bank of Africa. Gentlemen, Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa. Strong is a group and close is a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. And St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. Dr. Apak, Clement Apak, says 4 ministers resign and the president uses that as a conduit to increase the size of government. With all the haircuts and calls for government expenditure to be cut down, the president displays such insensitivity, and you say what? Musa in Asawasi says, educate me on legal ramifications of the domestic debt exchange program. If government goes ahead to implement the program in its current form and bondholders decide to seek redress in court, what will be the legal consequences? I'm told the government can exempt pensioners and will meet IMF requirement for bailout because the percentage is insignificant, hence why government is wicked, as the former Chief Justice says. Well, the former Chief Justice says when it becomes necessary, then a suit can be taken. Then PK, sending from Elembele. PK, your message is very long. I'll just read a portion of it. It says, government domestic debt exchange. Clearly, this is an indication of the fact that the NPP government's one district, one factory program failed. As a developing country, it's high time Ghana invested mainly in productive ventures which have a good tendency to repay back borrowed loans from one generation to the other. Currently, Ghana has been beset by domestic debt restructuring, meaning clearly there is no one district, one factory, which we borrowed to build, which is paying off a national debt. Okay, interesting. And you also want to talk about building other things. All right. Now, okay, I've got a couple of your messages that I need to read. K. Amofa says, if 100+1 ministers brought us here as a country, I do not think holding on to 80+ ministers with accompanying costs would do the trick. The president must cut down the ministers to save money. Hillary Babanao says, interesting arrogance and lack of conduct to the sensibilities of the concern of the citizenry. My goodness, this government. And Mofa says, I worry that the finance minister talks as if someone caused Ghana's debt situation, yet he has brought all this problem to us. Me, Oforiatta, cannot claim to be managing the economy well and still have a debt to GDP ratio in the region of 100% plus. Finally, Mike Amampe, onwards from the debt exchange, we will need tax reforms. Thank you. Now, Clara, I'm sure that you have seen this letter from the Attorney General to the Auditor General. Of course, you are Vice Chairperson of the CDD board, and there is a reaction from the CDD that literally says the Attorney General should keep his advice to himself. This is really bad. They title it, the Akufo-Addo government must cease its continuous assault on the office of the Auditor General. What's wrong with what the Attorney General sought to advise the Auditor General in this letter?
Thank you very much, Samson. Before I answer what is wrong, let me provide the constitutional context to the office of the Attorney General. Now, as we already all know, and as has always been taught right from high school upwards, that we practice our democratic governance is secured on separation of powers, if you like, on division of powers. So we have the arms of government, and we also have a critical institutions. We call them the independent institutions that have been created by the Constitution. Now, if you look at these independent institutions, the Constitution has been very clear that these independent institutions are not subject to the direction or control of any other persons. The reasons for this are because, one, apart from having the letter of the law that secures a democracy, democracy also thrives on certain values. So you need to operate in such a way that you don't use the letter or the lack of letter to detract from the democratic values. And also we know our Supreme Court has consistently held that when it comes to constitutional interpretation, we apply a broad and liberal approach rather than a strict and technical approach to interpreting the provisions of the Constitution. The reason is simple. Constitutions are living documents. They must, at every point in a people's historical life, reflect the aspirations of the people. And the courts that are the custodians of law, and the Supreme Court in this case being the custodian of the Constitution, must always look at interpreting the provisions in a way that sends the people forward, deepens democracy, rather than claws them back. Again, because constitutions are not like pamphlets or manuals that at every time when something happens, you say, oh, this is not there, let me go and put it there. So constitutions are not designed to be amended willy-nilly. That anytime, let's say that when we made the Constitution, there was no internet at the time. So when we are talking about publishing information, it is not provided in the Constitution that you can publish on your website. So let's go and look for a provision, and then if we don't find a provision in the Constitution that you can publish on your website, then it means that if you publish on your website, it's unconstitutional. Or that we should go and amend the Constitution and put something like that there. That's not how constitutions work. If there is a publication, the intention is, what is the purpose? What does it seek to achieve? And if you look at the Constitution, together with the other parliamentary laws, acts of parliament that set up the Auditor General, remember that the office of the Auditor General is a constitutional creature. So we have that, and we have the Audit Service. The office of the Attorney General, the Auditor General, is an office by itself. It is, even though the Auditor General is a member of the Audit Service Board. So we should not be confusing the two offices. Now, the constitutional role of the Auditor General is very simple and very clearly stated, as well as noted in the Act as well. The Auditor General is the one that audits all public bodies and has an obligation to submit that report to Parliament. Now, what is the role of the audit report? We must bear in mind that the audit report is not co-created between the Auditor General and Parliament. That's not what it is. The audit report is the document of the Auditor General. And the Auditor General is the author of that document. That document is not co-authored by Parliament and the Auditor General. And why is this important? This is important to steward the role of Parliament in the audit report. What the law tells the Auditor General to do when it comes to the Constitution is that after you are done with your audit report, present it to Parliament or submit it to Parliament. The Auditor General's work is done. Under the Audit Act, after this, the Act instructs the Auditor General to publish the report. It goes ahead to mention some of the institutions, particularly that the audit must be submitted to. Now, in an era where we have gone through to emphasize the issue of freedom to information and making public documents available, at the time that the audit report is submitted to Parliament and all the other bodies and required to be published by law, it is a public document. So the Auditor General doesn't need the permission of anybody on when to publish their report. What the Auditor General has to do is, in preparing the audit report, they must follow certain processes. That includes giving the right to be heard to all the parties who are subject to the audit report. I am not suggesting that the audit report is, the Auditor General is infallible. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. And the law provides situations as what to happen when you are not happy with the audit report.
Yes, Clara. So the Attorney General says the Auditor General's report, the Constitution instructs the Auditor General that once you are done with the report, take that report to Parliament through the Speaker. We all agree to that. Is that not so?
That is so.
What is Parliament supposed to do with the report? And
Parliament
and is that only a mere regularity, not part and not needed to make the report complete?
What Parliament is supposed to do with the audit report is to debate it in the public interest. And then after debating it in the public interest, if the Parliament thinks that there is the need to take further action on the report, they can set up a committee to do so. But that is Parliament's work. That work that Parliament does is not now for Parliament to tell the Auditor General that I think you should include A, B, C, D in your report. No, that's not what the Constitution says. But the Constitution provides avenues for what to do if you are not satisfied with the report. And it does not include Parliament directing the Auditor General what must be included, that amend here, delete this, add this. That's not what the Parliament is supposed to do. So we must understand that the work of Parliament is separate from the Auditor General's report.
It's separate to what end? It's separate to what end? What is the purpose?
The purpose is to see whether or not things have gone wrong. There's the anti-corruption bit. And Parliament is the representative of the people.
So,
it is that
so people appear to Parliament. People appear in Parliament before the Public Accounts Committee. And they show evidence. Sometimes that contradicts what the auditor has said. What do you say to that?
If they show evidence to Parliament, that is why Parliament can set up a committee to discuss or to take further steps. That committee, like I said, its powers do not include asking the Auditor General to amend the report, but it can include, let's say that we need to go to court. So if a person is not happy or thinks that something there is wrong, the person has the right to go to court or to contest the report. So the point I'm making is we have to understand the processes and the role of the report and the role of Parliament. Now, even to start with, Parliament's role on the report does not start until the report is final. Because what the Auditor General must submit to Parliament is not a draft report. It is after the Auditor General
so the Attorney General's concern. The Attorney General's concern is this. The audit finding, the Auditor General makes a finding against me as an individual and says I misappropriated X amount of money. And then he publishes it. Once he submits the report to the Speaker, he publishes it. And people start, attacking me, calling me a thief. And then I am called before Parliament. I go before Parliament. I show Parliament that the auditor did not pay attention to A, B, C, D. If he had done so, he would not have come to that conclusion, making people, as it were, defame me the way they have done.
That is why I talked about the audit process. In the audit process, the Auditor General must have provided opportunity to you in the first place to provide all documentation and for your side of the story to be heard. If the Auditor General did not do that, there is a problem with it. And the cure for that problem is not by Parliament directing Auditor General to insert that. And that is why I said that it's critical for us to acknowledge that the Auditor General is not infallible. That's not the suggestion.
Right.
It is that there are things in the Auditor General that must rightly be contested.
The Attorney General says, the Attorney General says, when people appear before Parliament, he says, persons and institutions affected by the report receive a further hearing on the findings of the Auditor General's report at the proceedings of PAC in Parliament. A prior publication of the Auditor General's report completely undermines the purport and meaning of Article 1875 and 6 and should not be encouraged. Consequently, I advise a withdrawal of the report on the government COVID-19 transaction from your website before same has been debated by Parliament and considered by the appropriate committee of Parliament.
Now we must do a balancing of rights here. And in the balance, because that's the whole thing, what a democracy is about, a balancing of rights, where we take efforts to protect everybody's rights as well as deepen democracy. So we must do a balancing of rights here. And as I noted, the balancing of rights comes in the procedure for auditing. So if our issue is that in the process of auditing, the Auditor General did not do A, B, and C, that is a legitimate issue. And that issue should be tackled so that the processes for auditing can be looked at. But when we now say that that process should come after the final audit report, we are not helping ourselves very much.
Okay.
Because then when do we have a final audit report? And the audit report that is submitted to Parliament, is that a draft report or is that the report under the Constitution?
Okay. You, Sami Jamfi, representing your party, also issued a statement, just like the CDD has done. You issued your statement earlier yesterday, and you took the Attorney General to the cleaners, including suggestions that this was an interference in the Auditor General's work, and the Auditor General should not be interfered in the performance of his functions. How so? Is there no reasonability in what the Attorney General is suggesting? Don't let them crucify people before they are giving the further hearing where they may have the opportunity to correct things.
Samson, I submit to you that there is not a modicum or reasonability in the so-called directive, request, or advice from the Attorney General to the Auditor General relative to the publication of audit reports. The Auditor General is the creation of the Constitution, which governs his work. And the Constitution is clear that in the performance of his duties, he is not subject to the direction or control of anybody. The Attorney General is the principal legal advisor to the government, not the Auditor General.
The audit service is part of the public services of government under the Constitution.
But the Auditor General...
The Supreme Court has also said that the Attorney General, there's no problem with the Attorney General being the lawyer for the Auditor General.
No, but I'm saying that the Auditor General is different from the Audit Service. The Audit Service is not constitutionally independent and not subject to the control or direction of any person or authority. The Auditor General is constitutionally independent. And so, the Attorney General has no business advising or purporting to direct or control the work of the Auditor General. That is the first point that I want to make very forcefully. Secondly, there is a legal duty imposed on the Auditor General. Let's get it clear here. The Auditor General is not doing anybody a favor. This is not an option he can exercise. There is a clear legal duty imposed on him by Section 23 of the Audit Service Act 2000, Act 584, to publish audit reports immediately. The law says as soon as it is laid before Parliament. Now, how can the Attorney General, the leader of the bar, be advising the Auditor General not to obey the law? Because that is, in effect, that is what he's doing. The law says publish as soon as...
He's saying, don't construe the act separately. Look at the act in the face of the Constitution and the purport of the Constitution.
So what he's saying, in effect, is that don't apply what has been written black and white in the law, but work with my personal construction and interpretation of the law. That is how ridiculous that suggestion is. Because you can speak to 10 lawyers and we can have varying positions on the interpretation of a provision. The point is, it is written black and white there. Publish the report as soon as it is laid before Parliament. And so this whole issue about construct the laws holistically, that is your individual opinion. You are not a court of competent jurisdiction. And so you cannot impose that on the Auditor General. In any case, that position is flawed, Samson, because you can only say that the publication of an audit report is prejudicial to the interests of auditees if the auditees were not given a hearing during the audit. But we know that the Auditor General gave all auditees in this particular instance of the audit of COVID-19 expenditure a hearing, and their responses are captured in his report. And so the published report contains the responses of the auditees. How is that prejudicial to their interest? Again, look at the counter proposal he's urging on the Auditor General. Oh, don't publish, lay it before Parliament. How ridiculous. Doesn't the Attorney General know that laying a document before Parliament is tantamount to publication? Because once the document is laid before Parliament and it is not marked confidential, it means it is a public document. Any citizen can access it from the table office or the Public Affairs Directorate or even from the Library of Parliament. So, counterproductive proposal. A busybody who should be focusing on retrieving stolen COVID funds for the state, purporting to advise somebody he is not supposed to advise on breaking the law, when he should be commending him. Again,
whilst this is what is taking our attention, you find that in that letter, there's been a period of collaboration and work between the Attorney General and the Auditor.
Not under this particular Attorney General, the office of the Attorney General.
Including this Attorney General. Or
including this reference to a 2019 letter. And then, he was not Attorney General.
And then he's seeking to give, assist the office, form committees to see how they can retrieve monies and the rest.
Over the years, what has been the outcome of that assistance? Zilch, nothing. So it's the usual, attempts to obfuscate issues and prevent. Let me.
Wait, okay. This position by the
you come back to me.
This position by the attorney, you've done some 5 minutes left.
Only 5 minutes. Just 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds.
Do that.
This suggestion that let the report go to Parliament so that the auditees can have an opportunity to be heard again is neither here nor there. It is not in the Constitution. The Constitution only allows Parliament to do two things: to debate the report, and when necessary in the public interest, refer the matter to a committee to deal with matters arising from the report. Okay. And so they don't validate the report. They cannot amend it. They cannot change it. Even if they disagree with the Auditor General, they can't do anything about that final report.
Right.
Those against whom adverse findings have been made can only go to the High Court to seek redress against such charges and disallowances.
My question
it's as simple as that.
Now is that what's your position in the first place? And how does it feel that the Attorney General comes under such, backlash from the CDD's letter? You can see that this is a lot of legal, thinking going into it.
Thank you very much. I think that there's a very serious intercourse that I am actually enjoying at this particular moment. The legal gymnastics going on from all the parties and etc., responding to the Office of Attorney General. But let me tell you something. I have had a personal experience.
I dare say that he wouldn't have written that letter.
I've had a personal experience on this particular matter. I indicated to you off air that I had a discussion with the Venerable Domelevu on this particular provision, as in Section 23. Okay? I've had an intensive discussion with him on that matter. But let me put this in perspective. You see, there is a plethora of authorities.
Your discussion with him agrees with what the Attorney General
I actually disagreed with him on the blanket provision of 23 and its application. I disagreed with the former, yes, and I agree with Dami on this one, the Honorable Attorney General, and I'll soon explain to you why.
Okay.
You see, if you look at our history, let me draw your attention to two main cases, Brown and Attorney General and Apia Ofori and Attorney General. If you read these two cases carefully, they establish beyond doubt that the Office of the Auditor General is under the Public Services Commission, right? It's under public service. And if you look carefully at Article 199(1), the import of it as against the provision as I adumbrated in this, and the fact that the Auditor General is actually strictly in the circumstances under the public services. The Attorney General can represent the Auditor General in court. And you remember that not even in the far distant past, in 2020, 2 years ago, Asari and Attorney General, when he took the Auditor General to court, the Supreme Court had to order that the Attorney General should represent the Auditor General. So why can't I advise someone I represent? It would be ridiculous that I represent you, but I cannot advise you.
The issue now is that this advice
I'm going there. I'm going there. So if you look at the provisions, and I know what will be done very soon. I know that Dami, as an astute lawyer as he is, very soon, you initiate a process to strike down this provision is under Section 23.
As in a suit?
You will get it out.
As in a suit?
An amendment.
Because
I'm very, very convinced.
Can't imagine the Attorney General.
He will get it out. He will get it out through. He will initiate it and get it amended. Because you see, you have to make a holistic application of it in the line of the constitutional provisions. Let me ask, draw your attention to something. Samson, it's unfortunate there's no time, but just one second.
I wish there was time.
If you look at the provisions under Section 17, under Section 16, and under Section 1857 and 875, if you look at all those provisions, they come before Section 23. And there must have been a reason why they come before Section 23, that you are presenting the thing to Parliament. And there have been so many cases where people have gone to Parliament and explained away the Auditor General's application of a particular provision that is against them. And they explained it away, and Parliament asked them to go. And there was no problem. So the question is, if you indict me in your report, and you publish it and send it to Parliament, and I go to Parliament after my explanation, it is very clear that I committed no offense.
We have run out of time.
How are you going to remedy
we have run out of time, but the CDD asked a question that there are members of Parliament who are on board.
We don't have enough time.
Members of Parliament who are on board. So they go to Parliament and they say, you have made a finding against my entity, and I want this correction.
Go to court.
Would that not be conflict of interest?
I'm saying that it's unfortunate that we don't have time.
All right.
But I would have dissected this issue further. I want to say in conclusion that the Attorney General is not wrong. In fact, he's right in his decision. And he's advised...
Can he advise the Electoral Commission of Ghana?
Look,
can he advise the judiciary?
Please. Let me tell you something.
Can he advise?
Hold on.
I'm sorry, we have run.
Have you read Kwasi?
Yes.
Have you read Kwasi?
My outfit is by Habil.
What was the import of it?
The fact that
you can find them at the Ghana Gate East Legon, and you can call them on 0200 84 1988. Thank you very much. All right, we should. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. This has been Newsfile.